be talking about current trends and best practices, specifically for improving the user adoption and your productivity. And my background's in EPM and BI, so we'll focus around those, as I'm sure many of you are as well. My name is DJ Hoelscher. I'm an enterprise learning strategist with the Oracle University side of the house. So I get to go and work with wonderful customers and people like yourselves to put together good learning programs and help to make sure that we get the best adoption program for the users out there as possible. So now's the time that if anybody's in the wrong place, you can stand up and walk out and we'll just turn away, right? All right. As if any of you have attended any of the Oracle presentations so far, we have to show our safe harbor statement. There are some things that we will be talking about today that is a little bit more cutting edge and hasn't fully been released yet, that are kind of in beta or test. We can do some custom training and things out there on some of these things. But I want to show you guys what it's like and what we've been doing for some other customers, so you can see what's out there, what's available, some of those new technology trends. So today's agenda is we're going to be looking at a few different things. First off, I want to make you feel comfortable with whether you are on-premise or cloud or looking to move to the cloud. These best practices and some of the trends that we're talking about are applicable to all. In the cloud, it's going to oftentimes be more sped up. The process is a little quicker. As some of you may know, the implementation timelines are moving along quicker for cloud stuff. Instead of a year-long project, it might be 3 to 6 months. So some of the timelines have to get sped up, as well as on user adoption, training, those sorts of things have to get sped up as well. So what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit broader spectrum. It's going to cover both for on-premise, cloud, all of those. We're going to be covering, just have a few slides in here about why user adoption is important. Especially in those cases that maybe you guys have some team members or managers or someone who's telling you to do this, but they don't quite see the value of trying to get users to adopt stuff. So I got a few slides in here. You can download the presentation and go ahead and use those to try to get others to jump on board as well. We'll talk about some of the success factors and ways to mitigate some of those risks that could be out there. Talk about the best practices and trends. We've seen the cloud changing our world. Whether you're on-prem currently or already in the cloud is changing not only just the way that we do our software and implement things, but it's also changing the way that people learn and the way that we can deploy some of that learning and adoption practices. So we need to make sure that we're adjusting to some of those. And then I really want to get into some of the learning options that are out there, some of those tips and tricks and ways that you can use some of that technology or different learning programs and things to help some of that adoption. We'll do a quick wrap up and then Q&A. One thing that I do want to note at this point is I am more of a interactive person. I like to be a people person. So if there is questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand and ask the questions away. So first off, let's talk a little bit about why user adoption is important. I know that some people have a belief that, well, they'll just learn. They'll figure it out. And that can happen. I've seen many of those, and I've seen many of them fail. And that's why we need to at least make sure that we address it. So some things to note is some drivers for success. So first off over here, 79% of IT projects fail due to human-related factors. And oftentimes those factors happen to be, it's not the actual technology itself. It has to do with the educating of the users, helping them to understand the importance and benefits that they'll get. So on the bottom left, it says 2 out of 3 IT projects fail due in large part due to user adoption issues. If people aren't using it, how are you going to consider it a success, right? And there's some things that we can do, and that's what we'll be going through today. Some stats that are out here, some Gartner reports and different statistics. So first off, education is a huge component of user adoption. Whether it's true formal training or communication plans or even just having a quick lunch and learn or 1 hour segment to let people know what the differences are going to be, what's changing, what's going on there. So education is a big part of that. Just a stat that's out there, 1 hour of training saves 5 hours of lost productivity as well as those untrained users, they can require 6 times more support. So I don't know how many of you out there have like a first level support team or power users or somebody that initially your users go to. If those end users don't know what they're doing or at least have a little bit of training, those super users or support team are going to get bombarded 6 times more often than if they were properly trained. As we move into the cloud, on the right-hand side here, we're looking for user adoption for new cloud applications. And some of the big things, one of the key words that I look here is the speed of adoption. Cloud is moving so fast and people are moving to it quickly, the projects go so fast, you need that speed of adoption that much quicker to be able to see that ROI and get ready. You don't have a year's time frame to create content, create a learning program, create some user adoption programs to be ready to develop. You got to turn this around really quick and you got to have that speed there. So 82% of organizations with well-trained teams are satisfied versus only 60%. So there is definitely a component, and we'll talk about what is training, what is change management, what are some of those things. Sometimes you can say, well, you work for Oracle University, that means to be this huge, really expensive program. It doesn't necessarily mean that whatsoever. It really just depends on the project. If any of you were in here for last year's, you'll see this, and I've used it before. I love this quote. It doesn't really matter if you have the best system in the world. If your end users aren't using it, it's essentially useless. If they're going back to spreadsheets and it's not going through the planning system or S-based system, or they're creating some of their own reports and they're not using the BI tool, what's the purpose of the tool out there? So let's get into some of those success factors and mitigating some of the risk, managing those risk issues. First and foremost, resistance is always going to be normal. I like using my kids at times as examples because we're creatures of nature. And if any of you have kids out there, you'll be able to understand as well. When I tell my kids to do something, their automatic response is obviously they want to resist that, right? They don't want to do exactly what dad says. And for a short time, being able to say, it's because dad said so, works. Unfortunately, as they get older, those questions and the wondering why and understanding why we need to do this becomes that much more important. And really, that's us as we grow as well. We're continuing to have resistance. And if we don't understand why we're doing something, it's much harder to adopt. So some of the things that need to be addressed and we need to understand when we're getting into some of these resistant things is we can run into a failure situation. If people sit and resist too much, we can run into, and that ROI is not there, or we lose our investment altogether. Lack of system utilization, that's huge, but not only the lack of utilization, that can end up having a huge productivity hit as well. So you're not getting that ROI. Conflict situations, this one's one of my favorites. You can easily run into a conflicting situation when you've got IT running and trying to put protocol. Business owners and users were not involved in some of those decisions or understanding what was really going on. I have seen some very big qualms going on between IT and business. I'm sure you guys have seen some of those as well. And it's really important just to make sure to address some of those issues, sometimes those elephants in the room of what needs to be addressed. And the last thing is if the users and managers aren't part of that solution, or at least understanding where things are going, why we're doing things, the chances are that they're probably going to be part of that problem for that resistance as well. Anybody go through a spreadsheet add-in to SmartView transition? If you have, you know very well what resistance is like. And how change management and understanding why we need to go to this is important. Unfortunately, it's not around anymore. What are we going to do about it? Let's come up with a solution together and try to figure this out. Remember that old Staples commercial that had the easy button over there? Well, we've changed it to the change button instead of the easy button. It'd be nice to have an easy button, and it's not always easy. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have some great users, understand the technology and things, but some success factors that we need to understand and know about as we go into here to help make that change button possible. We need to make sure that we're clearly defining our vision. Vision is really important, as well as making sure that we're being transparent about that vision and letting the users know what value they are getting out of this. How is this going to impact their life? If this new system, instead of them doing a bunch of pivot tables in Excel and all this stuff, it's going to end up saving them 6 hours a week because it's all embedded in the system, isn't that a pretty big value to them? They're going to get to go home on Friday evening instead of staying till 8 o'clock at night. These are some of the things that it's surprising, just a little bit of information and showing the value to those users, they're willing to jump on board. I'm sure you guys didn't come into this room expecting that, hearing that you're going to become marketing people sometimes. You need to be that marketing person to go out to your users and be able to say, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is why it's going to be great, and this is how it's going to help and affect you. Oracle can come in and sell you this great product. The SCs and sales team sometimes can be pretty convincing, right? The question is can you guys be as convincing to your staff and users on the benefits that you were sold on buying the product and using it? That's the big question. Can you become that marketing person? And it's not all on you. We need to make sure that we empower some sponsors or some change agents, whether they're power users or those first trial people to adopt it, administrators, sometimes executives. You need those people to come alongside and be a part of that and empower them. Make sure that they're able to give some input into this. We want to make sure that we can define the impacts associated with the migration or to move to something. Or if we're running into something where maybe we've already implemented, we're using it, but we're not seeing the user adoption. What was the cause for change? What were some of these things that were happening and what's impacting them? Are they just used to pushing the paper for approvals or using Excel directly? What are some of those impacts to them? Maybe they're the ones that created that original spreadsheet, and they're feeling a little bit left out here that you're moving to a new program. So what's the impacts to them? Understanding those and make sure that we're addressing those. A big one is communication, that two-way communication. Make sure it's ongoing. It's not just a one-time thing. If you can hear of what some of the concerns, what some of the comments are, oftentimes there's something that may be very irrelevant, but it's just something that had gotten into the individual's heads that this isn't going to work because we used to do it this way. If you learn about that early on, you can mitigate that and move forward. But if that concern gets out there and it gets out to the rest of the users, it's going to be very difficult to come across later on. So make sure that communication both ways stays open. And the other big thing is having some sort of documentation or include some training. There's some new in-app guides and things that I'll show you here once we get into some of the options that you can use. So those are some things you want to make sure that you have something out there that they can always go back to that's going to help them to understand what's out there and available and how it's impacting them. We need to make sure to address the cloud. It's a question for you. How many of you have already moved to a cloud product so far? We got one in here? All right. How many are looking to or interested sometime in the future that we might be moving to the cloud? All right. And I'm sure all of us can raise our hand that at some point, maybe it's 20 years from now, we might be looking at the cloud, right? Yeah, there you go, exactly, 2030, when the support's gone. Well, there's how many enterprise customers still out there, and the support's gone too. So one of the key things that we need to address with the cloud adoption is the rapid adoption of it. So first off, just the rapid, if you're moving to it and you're doing implementation, it's a lot quicker. Some of those implementations are only 3 to 6 months versus a year or 2 year type programs. So you got to make sure you can move along with that. But also, how often are they coming out with updates now? In the EPM cloud world, we've got updates every month. They're coming out and pushing new stuff to the cloud. How can you make sure that your documentation, your workflows, all those sorts of things are up to date and make sure that they're relevant? So those are some challenges that we've even run into that we're okay, how can we make sure that our training is up to date and it's going to be relevant to the users? The other thing is cost-effective training for large numbers. If you're rolling out the cloud to a lot of people, especially, let's look at older versions. Well, planning has the simplified interface in 11.124, but other EPM products, BI products, you've got the simplified interface, you've got a different interface, so it's very different to an end user. I've walked into situations where an end user freaked out because the color of the button changed. Or, oh, remember in Hyperion when, what was it, 11.1.1, when we had the ship wheel up in the corner? I've had a few users completely freak out about, now what do I click on? I don't have the ship wheel anymore. Oh, come on, guys, it's not that hard to figure out, but it changed, and there's some people that they cannot stand change. So you gotta address that some people learn differently and understand things differently. So you just gotta make sure that we're relevant and we're training and able to make sure that those large users are ready. The other things is customization to the cloud applications. You can have some very basic training and just get, or adoption things and documentation, but if you're customizing and making changes to your own system, you need to make sure that those are up to date as well. Awareness of those modifications and of your own internal processes and policies. How do you guys notify your end users if you're changing a policy or changing a procedure right now? You send out an email? How many emails do you guys get in a day? There's days that I'm gone on vacation and I come back the next day and I've got almost 200 emails. Do you think I read all of those? And a lot of those are policy and procedure. Maybe I should read them. So is email the most effective way to get these out? Is there other effective ways to get out in front of people so that they know what those changes are? And then staying current on every new change. Like I mentioned before, the cloud is rapidly moving. So if you end up where you are getting some new pushes on a monthly basis, are you guys even aware of what some of those new changes and updates are? How can you stay up to speed on those? So we'll talk about some of those things. You just have to make sure that we're addressing those, and these are some of the challenges that we're aware of. Just to kind of close out and look at this, some key things for proper things, and I call it change management. Change management is a big thing, whether you're just upgrading, doing some small changes, even process changes, policy changes, or if you're doing a major new implementation, there's a change management component to it. So the biggest thing that I want to tell you is no matter what, make sure that you're thinking about change management, whether it's a little tiny small thing, and it might just be a quick email communication. It might just be a 1-hour webinar just to tell people that, hey, here's the updates and changes you guys are gonna be addressing, this is gonna change. Don't just assume that people, that your users are going to be just fine. Just even having that short little blurb to them helps them feel like they're a part of it, they know what's going on, they're feeling much more comfortable. I've seen the smallest change cause a huge racket going on at a customer site. And even I was baffled as to why that was an issue. But the next time something like that happened, there was just some short communication, maybe a short video that went out to people to watch, and all of a sudden, it wasn't an issue anymore. So some of those key things with change management is, number one, make sure that you've got executive sponsorship on board. If you need to, print out the slide, say, DJ said so, I need your sponsorship, I need you to stand up. Even if you put a written statement out there, or actually we've been having a lot of customers start looking at having their executive sponsor create a short video. And we're embedding it right in the application and saying, hey guys, this is why we made this investment. This is how it's going to affect you, this is how we're going to benefit from this. And going back to my parent analogy, if mom and dad, sometimes that mom and dad saying I said so and this is why we're doing it, it works. But if you end up just saying dad said so, it's not quite there. But if you've got someone in an executive sponsorship, someone that can do that hiring and firing and it can affect your job, you're going to listen to them. And if you're going to understand that why they're doing this and understand from their perspective what they're looking at, now you feel a part of the process and you can move forward and be excited about this new program that's out there. So get executive involvement, make sure that there's communications that go on. Even if someone at the lower level is the one writing those communications, but asking the executive to send it out with their name on it makes a huge impact. Define having that communication and goals. Work with those executive management to understand what their goals are. If you don't know what the user adoption goals are from the executives, what are you supposed to be doing? What are you supposed? You've got 100 users, but 10 of them are using that. Is that their goal, or do they want full user adoption? Also, make sure that those goals are really truly attainable and not crazy. And then the last one is, especially when it comes to cloud. Having some executive sponsorship and saying this is why we're moving to the cloud, why we're doing it now, this is what we're saving as a company. Hey, if the executive can say we're saving this as a company, they don't have to directly say that this might affect your paycheck in the future and you might be able to get a raise, but just them saying that we're saving this much as a company you might start thinking about, hey, I might actually get to have a raise someday instead of getting one 10 years ago only. But anyway, those are some things that, to think about from an executive sponsorship. Communication is absolutely huge. Making sure you have a good, clear communication plan. Set out that timeline so you're not accidentally sending out communications after the fact. So make sure you have kind of a plan as to when you want to notify users of what's going on, and start early. Let them know that, hey, this change is going to be happening. But we want to make sure you're prepared. Emphasize those key benefits. So like I was talking about, if you can tell those users as to how this is impacting them, how it's going to help them, what those benefits are, it's going to make that adoption that much easier. They actually might get excited about using it instead of, oh my gosh, I got to move and do something else now. One of the other things that is really important, and I mentioned it before, is if you're just using email, it's not necessarily the best or only way to do it. People learn and understand things in different formats. Some people get way too many emails and they're not going to look at some stuff. Other people, they just like to have that personal touch and have like a conference call or some sort of webinar. So make sure that you're doing some sort of like I said before, you have to be a marketing person, some sort of marketing campaign. Think about what are the ways that you're going to touch people in different formats that they're going to actually hear and be communicated to. Having some different type of portals or collateral that you can send out and leave on people's desks or things. Brown bag sessions, those are a great way to get some power users and different people to start getting excited about it, and maybe you'll start learning who some of those early adopters will be, so then they can help you with some of those learning programs and helping to push out and train people even. Then the last thing is just the clear goals. Get those goals set, make sure they're visible, make sure everyone understands those, but also make sure they're tangible. Make sure that you can actually attain those. If you expect 100% adoption from day one, it's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that. It's not going to happen. Unless you got only 5 users or 10 users, yeah, then you might be able to get there. But even in those cases, I've seen it where sometimes you only get 50% adoption from day one. So make sure that they're tangible. Smart goals, I don't need to go through those. Just make sure that they're in the SMART criteria. And then make sure that the other thing that I found that's really important, that's helped a lot, is making sure that those goals are tied to your business benefits as well as your issues. So if you can say that by having this specific goal, we're going to increase productivity by 5%. Or we're going to alleviate this specific issue. Maybe it's an issue of having invalid data. Right now we're running a certain percentage of invalid data and bad entries. But by having this new solution and having users adopt it, we're going to eliminate by X amount percent. Having some of those tangible things, then you can track and see how your user adoption as well as how the new program is affecting your organization. Let's get into some of those best practices as well as the new learning trends that are out there. I'll address the elephant in the room, and I know we only have one person on cloud now, but people are looking at it. Cloud is continuing to be the future, and that's where a lot of the investment is going in. But it's also, because of the cloud, it's changing our world, the way that we bring in users, whether you're still on-prem or in the cloud. It's changing the way that we can and are allowed to get to our users. It's changing the way that different learning programs and user adoption programs are set out. There's just new technologies, new trends out there and available, and a lot of that's being driven because of the cloud and the things that the cloud can do for us. So maybe you're not on a cloud product, but you can maybe leverage some cloud learning technologies or some user training tools and stuff like that. So those are some things to think about. Going back to the basics here, how can we get to our race to ROI? User adoption is a huge component of getting our ROI out of that product, right? Going back to the basics though, go to those who, what, where, when, why, how. Who are the people that we need to adopt this? Are they at a manager level? Are they at an end user level? Are they, what is their role within the organization? Who are these people? What is it that they need to learn? Do they need to know their specific process? Do they need to learn, are you guys changing your policies? Are you just doing a simple upgrade, no policies, nothing is changing, there's not a whole lot going on? What is it that, maybe it's just the communication plan then, just to let them know that there's a minor change happening. Or is it some major thing that, what do they need to know? We need to teach them the new policies, we need to teach them the new program. Oh, by the way, we're doing an org change as well, and you're going to report to a different manager. So there could be lots of different things that are in there. When do you need to do it? What's your project timeline? And align that user adoption program with that. So making sure that those users are enabled from day one is very important. If you're expecting them to get into the system for 3 months and then come back and try to get them, it's a lot more difficult to get them on board. Where are you going to do it? Or where are the people located? Are you guys a global company? Do you have users across the globe in multi-languages? Or are they in one location? So then that helps you start thinking about, well, how are we communicating this? How are we delivering training? How are we getting the different components? Do we need to have power users or user group type people in the different areas of the globe to help with user adoption? So where are you doing this? Why do you need to do it? I go back to that of my son always used to ask me why. And I used to be able to get by with, Dad said so. That doesn't work anymore. He's almost 8 years old, and his questions now turn into, why does it work this way? Why do we need to do this? Why does it work this way, and why can't it be done another way? And sometimes I just have to say, you know what, I'm not sure, but let me look into that. So those are some of the things, if you can ask those questions up front, and try to think about what are these users going to be asking, and what are those why questions they're going to be asking. If you can address those up front, your user adoption is going to be that much easier. I can use SmartView as an example, trying to move to SmartView from the Excel add-in. I was one of those. I love the add-in. I still do. It's a great tool. But moving to SmartView is difficult because it looked different. There was different things in there. The early marketing was bad publicity. I just heard bad things about it. But honestly, once I got in it, I realized that I was able to do everything that I needed to do. Yeah, some people might not be able to do what they needed to do, but I was able to do what I needed to do. If someone would have just came and told me that up front, instead of hearing all that bad things about it, I would have been much simpler to adopt it, probably 2 years earlier than I did. Then the last thing is how. How are you going to deliver this? Is it just a quick, easy, simple email communication, video communication, 1-hour webinar, something like that? If so, great. Or is it something much more robust? Do we need to have a whole learning program? Do we need to implement a learning management system to help track things? Do we have to have user group meetings, brown bag sessions, those sorts of things going on? How are we going to deliver this? So let's go through kind of a process timeline. This process timeline is applicable whether you're on-prem, whether you're cloud. If you are cloud, it's normally a little bit more accelerated. That's the only difference. So first off, identify your objectives. What do you need to communicate? What do you need to get out there for a user adoption program? But one of the key things, and one of the things that I see that is missing oftentimes when I walk in and start working with customers is, do you understand what your users are, where are they currently at? What do they know? What do they understand? What do they need to know? What would they like to know? So having some sort of user assessments can give you a great framework as to where to start from. I've had some people tell me that, oh, I've got some great power users and they know the system inside and out. And we start meeting with some of those people and we do some assessments. And we find out those people that they've told me that are power users, they know how to go into SmartView and click, they can retrieve the data and maybe pivot. They have no idea how to do anything else in the system. And they're missing out on some of that productivity and some of the great features that are out there. So we ended up finding out that they could do a whole lot more to get these people engaged with the program and be more productive with it. So having those assessments, understanding what the user surveys are, and then through that you can identify some of those potential issues. Maybe they're already hearing about some bad marketing publicity about this, or there's some bad words on the street in the organization about moving to this, and you can try to identify some issues that may come up, or some misconceptions or misidentifications that are out there. And then also through that, you can identify some of those knowledge gaps, like I mentioned about those power users, so-called power users that can't do anything. And then the next customer, I go, oh yeah, we just got power users. They're pretty good. They know what to do. And I find out, no, they're more of an administrator. They can write an Essbase cube if they want to. The other thing is then define your goals and metrics. So put those together, understand what goals you want to meet, and what are those metrics, and make sure those metrics are realistic. And create that strategy, that change strategy. So these things can be very, very simple, and we can move through this stuff in a matter of hours and get this stuff figured out. Or it might be a few months worth of working on this. It just depends on what your project is, what you're looking at. And I mentioned this before of how important communication is. If you don't do anything else that I've told you today, if the only thing that you get out of this is that it's important to communicate what's going on and what's coming, that'll get you probably the furthest out of anything else I tell you today. Communication is huge. Make sure, and part of that communication is what are those key benefits and how is it affecting those users. The next thing is put together that education or user adoption plan. Those include, what type of delivery method, how are we delivering this? Is it just some communication documentation? Is it a full training development program? Let's create the materials. Or is it, and then what schedule are we rolling this out on? Or maybe we're doing self-service type stuff, and there isn't necessarily a schedule, but there's a schedule to get that self-service out there. A big thing too is I have seen such a successful use of having some sort of a champion pilot or like super user type group. If you have that group and they've adopted it and they've found some of those issues and things that they don't like about, but they figured out the way, if they're that entrepreneurial type spirit and they're going to figure out a way to solution this, and they can get excited about this and be on board and be empowered, those people become your advocates and they will be able to talk any user into liking this thing. They can become, like the Oracle sales reps and SCs, they can come in and sell you guys on the product, right? These guys can be your sales team. They can go out and meet with those. And if you've got a global organization, get this in the different regions. Me talking in English to someone who speaks French primarily, they may not want to listen to me as much. But if you have someone in French Quebec who can go and talk to them, or over in France, they're much more likely to be willing to listen to them. So make sure that you're getting those in the different regions as well. Don't just expect one small group. Now you can start with one small group and then you start another small group and the others after that first one, that's fine. But have them in the different regions. Have them and also they can test your material, test your trials and tribulations and things you might run into. But then the next thing is just get those training adoption events out there. It might be the communications that you're doing, but also then decide, are you doing in-person style stuff, live events, or is it a virtual? Are you doing it over WebEx? Are they an hour long or are they 10 hours long? What do you need to do there? The new trend is digital, having everything recorded and self-service out there available. Some of the issues we run into some of that is, how do those users access it and do they remember where the heck to find it? So that leads us into the next thing, the guided learning, some of that in-app stuff. And I'll show you those in-app things and some of the new stuff so you can take a look at that. And the last thing is ongoing support. Don't forget about that. Make sure to keep those lines of communication open and hear from those users so that you have some understanding what's going on, but have that ongoing support. I love quick reference cards. One page front and back of all the key features of your program or your policies, whatever they might be. I've seen people laminate those and they just keep them at their desk and they pull them out whenever they need them. Quick reference cards are wonderful. Having some sort of recordings of the trainings and different sessions that you do. What type of reference material, you got your policy procedures. How do they access those? How can they get to those easily and also make sure that those are updated periodically? Or the new thing, kind of that guided learning, that in-application stuff, it is available in the applications. I've seen some people use that as kind of that first line of support. How do I access this? Instead of contacting the support team, it's right there in the application. One thing that we do need to address is that the world's changing. There is more of a digital concept. Most of the, more than half of the sessions here today was probably on cloud stuff and the digital format of things. So instead of, students liking to, your users liking to sit in person for training, and you still have those people, don't get me wrong, or a live session, especially these new graduates that are coming out, the new generation. They went through high school and college all online. They're used to accessing everything online. So we need to make sure that we're adopting and understanding that there's a digital transformation, but also because of that, we have a major generational differences. Now, don't get me wrong, I have seen my dad adopt some wonderful technology stuff and be able to pick things up great. And I've also seen my younger cousins who just got out of high school who can't do anything online yet. So don't get me wrong, the generations may be a little bit misconstrued, but there is, because of some of the generation differences, there's different ways of learning and different ways that people want to see stuff. So we need to make sure to adopt some of these. So some of the learning trends that we're seeing because of the cloud, because of these new generational changes and things like that, micro-learning. How many people like to watch 8 hours of video content with no hands-on and, yeah, it's kind of like listening to me in here, right? It's just kind of boring. So the new thing is micro-learning. YouTube, 2, 3, 4, 5-minute videos, right? I go out to YouTube and watch something on how to change the air filter on my car because I don't want to pay someone how to do it, and I can do it. I sit there, start the video, pause it after 30 seconds, unscrew something, go and do that, play it a little bit more. Short snippets. Micro-learning is just that short stuff. So don't expect someone to get everything out of learning if they're sitting there for 8 hours watching you talk on a video and doing PowerPoints. Break it up. Do shorter recordings. Ask them to do so many today and so many tomorrow and some more next week. Social learning, being able to communicate with peers, have some online formats and communication boards has worked great. Gamification is a new one, and I really love it. I'm an athlete, and I love to compete. You tell me that if I have the most points in our company in this month on learning, and I get a gift card to go to Starbucks, if I get that, darn right I'm going to get in there and do some learning and try to adopt this product. So getting the point system or some sort of gamification is, and we have some large global customers now that are using this gamification, and they have these monthly boards of who's the top learner out there and learning the new Oracle products and this and that. And they're giving away gift cards, or they get accolades or some sort of badging on their social media stuff to say that they were the top learner in their organization. Mobile learning, I mean, that's inevitable. We want to make sure that people can not only access it on their computer, in person, it can't just be in person only. Make sure they can access it on their computer, they can access it on their cell phones. Sometimes I'll admit, I don't know every single product technology out there in Oracle, but I go and support a lot of them from an education and change management and user adoption standpoint. I'll actually sit and watch some training videos and some videos on the train heading into a customer meeting just so that I can ramp up on stuff. That mobile piece is huge. Cloud-based, having something hosted for you instead of you guys needing to take care of it. 24/7 access, digital badging, that we see a lot of that with certifications and stuff. How do you access the global market? Then the big one is easy access. And one of those ways we've been seeing a lot of that easy access is in application. It's right there when they need it. They don't have to try to figure out, where did I see that thing again? So here's one of the things that we're doing at Oracle University here, just to address some of these topics. So first off, we do role, skills, and topics. So instead of having 4 or 5-day courses, or even on the user side, a 1-2 day, we're breaking it out on a specific role. So here's your role, you're a power user. And now here's the skills that you should attain in order to become sufficient at your role. And then underneath that, there's certain topics, or those are where the videos then are hosted, of what you need to learn in order to be proficient at the skill. We've then also embedded the search functionality, so they can go and find what they need, when they need it, instead of trying to go through a 5-day course and, oh, I only needed 2 days of that, lovely. You got progress reports to track where you're at, as well as company progress reports so that managers and things can see where their users are at. But then there's still people that love to have that in-person component. They're not going to go all digital and just learn in videos, right? So we've started doing some live events with here as well. So this is just trying to give you guys an example. If you guys can create something internally, if you want Oracle to do stuff, you got a partner to help do stuff, great. But these are some things that we're doing here at Oracle just to give you some ideas. We got digital badging, the gamification. We actually do track points and stuff now, so customers are leveraging that to give out stuff. The other thing is testing. We have skills tests where once they complete, the user completes a specific segment of those topics, they have to take a skills test. So they can't just be playing the video in the background and say they finished it. They have to complete those answers and be able to get 80% or above to pass. And those are reported. We also have online certifications now. It's proctored online stuff instead of having to go in person to take those. Learning paths. One of the things I don't like about YouTube is I can type in a search and I can get a whole bunch of stuff. But you start watching a video and then you realize, oh shoot, I need to go back and learn this now because they're talking about this and this and this, but they don't talk about what I need to know in that specific video. I need to go back and find something else. Where we've got learning paths to make sure that it's in the right order that they're learning stuff so they're not missing out on something. And then you can add stuff, personalized cues, just like Netflix and those sorts of things. So here's some modern components of a user adoption program. I mentioned the leadership support, communication plans, those are how important. I know some of us, and myself included, we like to make sure that we have job security, right? That we're the smartest one in the room. But we need to make sure that there's enough product knowledge that those users know. Otherwise, that adoption becomes difficult. So making sure that you get enough of your knowledge off to some of those users so they can be proficient and productive, it's going to make your life that much easier, so you're not going to get tons of questions on things. But also, you can still have job security. Don't worry, you're the ones that taught it to them. They're going to come back to you when they get past that and need more. So, just in time, continuous training. If they have to wait 2 months to take an in-person class, going to be pretty difficult to do month-end close this month, right? Flexible anytime, anywhere. The variable modalities, everybody learns differently. So if there's a way that you can have some sort of live events, whether it's in person or virtual, but also tag that on with some recordings and stuff like that is huge. One of the things that I think is a lost art and is very, very effective is the coaching and mentoring programs. I know a lot of companies that have had them in the past, they've gone away from them, and now with the new ways of having chat rooms and different stuff like that, there's an easy way, a new digital style way to have mentoring and coaching programs. So some of those super users, some of those people in that initial program that you're putting together, maybe help them start up some user groups and have these small coaching and mentoring sessions. And then when they're moving on to another topic, someone else in their group they can assign to be more of that subject matter expert. I think that's a lost art of the coaching and mentoring. I think that's a huge advantage, but there's new ways to do it instead of having to be in person. There's digital ways and components to do that. In-application is huge. I'll show you that here in a minute. And then governance reporting. There has to be some sort of program to oversee and make people accountable to make sure they're doing the learning, they're adopting the product. So make sure whatever you're doing, there's some sort of way to report back and show that, yes, these people have completed their learning, they're now in the system, and they've adopted the system. Find out a way to make sure that you have that and make sure people are accountable. So let's get into some of the learning options. First one is no training at all. Yes, I know that some people out there, even including Oracle people on the sales side, they'll come and tell you, it's so user-friendly, you're just going to pick it up. Unfortunately, I don't hear that comment from customers when they're out there. Even if there is the small, like I said earlier, even if it's just a short, quick communication thing, that's still the change management, that's user adoption. Not having any type of a user adoption program whatsoever, to me, is not acceptable. So let's just take that off the board. If there's anything that you learned today, someone telling you no user adoption is what we're doing, just say, no, we need to at least do something. Even if it's just a short, quick communication plan to let people know what's going on. That's still a user adoption plan. The other thing is, standard training courses, standard stuff, in-person, live webinar type things. Those are still applicable, and I highly recommend them. Even if you end up doing a 1 to 2 hour live webinar for the entire organization, then do everything else digitally, that little bit of personal touch ends up driving people. They understand how to even get into the digital formats and stuff, goes so much further. I actually manage one of our large customers globally who does this program. And it is amazing how many times I get questions just on standard navigation in the digital stuff. So we've started doing monthly sessions on just how to navigate the system. And the adoption of the learning program as well as how they're learning the tools and stuff has gone through the roof. So just having that little bit of in-person coaching and teaching them how to even just use the digital learning piece of it is huge. You can create a custom learning program, custom development, create some simulations, do some brown bag lunches, create some quick reference cards. Those are great ways to develop some stuff internally or ask your partner or Oracle or whoever to help develop those things. But also embrace and look into the digital stuff. There's digital subscriptions out there available. We have user ones as well as the administrator side. Other places you can create your own learning management system and have some digital stuff out there. But then the guided learning is huge also. And I'll show you the guided learning stuff here as well. So digital e-learning, it's immediate, self-paced, search functionality. And you can pick your tool. We love UPK from a user perspective. Especially for on-premise stuff, UPK works great, but there's Captivate to do recordings. There's like our training on demand format where we've recorded our training videos. You guys can record your own WebEx videos and post those out there. So having some sort of digital e-learning is helpful, especially like if you get those one-off new hires. Do you want to sit and try to teach them for 8 hours a day on ramping them up how to do it, or have some videos to get them started and then, okay, let's come back and we'll do some Q&A for an hour at the end when you're done. Here's one thing I just want to lead into getting into our in-app discussion. Our world is changing where it's difficult to get away for a long period of time. Most times these days, an average end user has only 1% of their time that they can focus on expanding their knowledge and going into training and understanding the product. 1% of their time. How can you fit a full day learning program in front of them? How can you pull them away to show them all the new features from their project? Kind of difficult, isn't it? That's one of the challenges we've been running into as well. 70% of their learning is on to the job, only 10% is formal training. How do we address that? That's what, here at Oracle University, we've started doing this guided learning stuff. We've been doing this for customers. So I want to show you what this is. There's other programs out there that you guys can develop on your own. What we're doing at Oracle University is we're creating the content. We're actually even hosting it for the customers so that if you're subscribing to the cloud, this can just be an add-on to the subscription and everything is being hosted for you. It'll automatically be updated with the new features and all those sorts of things. So this is something that's new. It can accelerate adoption because it's all right in the application. It can reduce your cost and service requests. So if you have a support team or if you're going out to Oracle, we've actually done some ROI analysis on using guided learning for user adoption. We had a customer that was doing, it was a 5-year cloud learning, or 5-year cloud subscription. And we were relying, they had already figured out their end user adoption plan, and it was gonna cost them $10 million over that 5-year period. I mean, they were doing a very good full-blown, and this is a global huge company. When we did the ROI analysis by using in-app instead of having to do in-person trainings and updating the content constantly and all those sorts of things, it was going to be over a $7 million cost savings to them by having in-application stuff. I mean, yeah, it was a huge investment up front to get this up and running, but overall it ended up saving a ton of money. So there can be some big ROI in using this, and it's just-in-time training. So some of the features, it's all embedded. It's all step-by-step guided assistance. It's based on the user's role. So if they're a manager, they're going to only see the tasks that they can do. Also, it's based on, it's context sensitive. So if you're on a different page, let's say you're in a planning form versus the main page, it'll know, okay, I'm only going to give you the planning options here. When you're in a planning form, what tasks do you need to do? You can embed like a new hire training thing. So the first time that a user logs in, this thing can pop up. This is an HCM one, just a screenshot I pulled. But it says, hey, welcome to PBCS, whatever it might be. Let us give you a tour of your new program. So we can give you an overview right in the live system. And you can also embed these if it's a new feature, a new policy, these can automatically be popped up as well. So the guided learning itself is developed and designed for the cloud. The underlying type of idea and program can be used for on-prem. It has to be a web-enabled tool. So like in Excel, this type of tool doesn't work in Excel. But the web-enabled stuff, the guided learning, all works on. And like I said, we've got base content and everything already pre-built for a lot of the cloud stuff. But this can be done on a custom piece as well, so it can be put on-prem. The other thing, there's these little beacons that you can be, you see the little red beacon, little red beacon up here. Any new features, any new policy changes, that can be flashing for the user to see. So when you change a policy, instead of sending out an email and hope they read it, it can be flashing right in there. They're putting in a new, you're maybe doing some new budget and planning, you got a new policy with it. There's this beacon guy that can be flashing, hey, review our new policies, our new procedures. So let me actually get in. I'll take just a few quick minutes. I'm going to show you in a PBCS environment here what that looks like. Of course, I've been talking too much, so it timed out. Sorry about that. All right, so in here you can see, interesting, the screen isn't, it looks like I'll make this a little smaller so you can see it. See over on the right-hand side here, we have this guided learning. So that is always there for the user. So if, let's say you're planning only on an annual basis, that manager that goes in to enter their plan, how many of them forget what they're doing from one year to the next? I know I do when I have to enter my HR benefits, that's for sure. So this guided learning is there for them always. If they don't remember something, they can go and look. So let's say either they're a new user or they need a refresher on something. I'm going to go in here as a user and say, give me an overview of the planning forms again. So I can click on this, and it's actually going to give me a guided path. Okay, now here's how you get into the forms. Go into the data icon, and let's expand our, come on. There we go. Let's expand this. Click next to go to the next thing. Select whichever form you need. In my case, I'm going to select the actual versus the plan. It pops up, and actually we've got a little video embedded in here. So you can embed videos, you can embed links to your policy and procedures. Maybe you've got your own LMS system that has a whole bunch of learning videos for you out there. You can embed those links. But right here we've got a video of an overview of the PBCS forms environment. You can click next and continue on, and just kind of gives you a quick overview of what the form is. But, so I'm going to get out of this now, and let's just say that you were asked, yeah, question.
How close is this to what you can achieve with UPK?
So with UPK, it's not a true in-application. You're taking screenshots of it to create the simulations. So anytime that you update the system or there's a change in your policy, you'd have to update the basically the learning material. With UPK, there is the do it mode, and then just on the right-hand side here, you have this, and then it's just telling you the different tasks instead of actually highlighting and following the icons. So this is actually embedded in the application where it can follow the icons. So if you guys customize the home screen and there's different tasks on there, the guided learning is going to follow those even when it changes. Where with UPK, you'd have to update the UPK material to do that. You can do what I kind of look at is, this is like the UPK do it mode, the next version, UPK do it mode 2.0. It's because now it's actually embedded right in the application instead of the little do it mode notes on the right-hand side. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? Okay. So let's say someone asked me to print. I don't see any print the forms in here. How do I print a data form? I forgot, I never had to do it, whatever it might be. So it's just telling, okay, and so now I know I got to go into the data tab here, click here, click on the print button, and if my image is working correctly here, the print will pop up. But anyway, it tells you where, so something, just a very simple, quick task that maybe you forgot how to do, that can be embedded here in the guided learning, and you can see all those different things. And yes, question?
Did you say that there's a generic guided learning that comes kind of as a default and then you can customize, or does the whole thing need to be created?
Well, so right now for some of the cloud products, so like Financials Cloud, HCM, all of those, we already do have pre-built content, like the UPK pre-built content they used to have. So that's where we have base flows, and then you can customize on top of that. EPM is in the next wave of that. PBCS will be one of the first ones. So we're currently developing the pre-built content for PBCS, so there will be pre-built content. As of right now, we can still do custom flows. Honestly, as a customer, I'd almost like to come in now, because then you guys can tell us what flows you need created, and we'll get them created exactly the way that you guys need them. So it can be both. The plan is going forward, we'll have all the base flows out there. EPM is the next wave that we're working on. Yes? Correct. Guided learning, it's kind of an add-on subscription. It is a subscription. So basically, if you're buying the product subscription and you want this included, it's just an add-on subscription. So we at Oracle University can add it on. It's based on your actual license purchase, and we normally align it directly to however many years your license, your product license is as well, and it's maintained just like a cloud product as well. So it's updated and maintained. You don't have to pay anything extra during the duration as well.
So as part of the subscription, you come in and you configure the application to support it, or is that done by the customer?
So as a part of the subscription, the customer doesn't have to do any of their own. They just need to tell us what are the custom flows that you need. So we've got this specific data form that is that we need to have a very detailed flow created, because everybody's going to be using this thing. So we'd come in and just sit down with you and record and get the flow, and then we'd host it for you. And also when the versioning updates, so if once a new version comes out and that flow maybe doesn't work, or maybe there's a little bit different, that's a part of the subscription. Those updates and changes will be done as well. All right, so let me so that's what guided learning is, and I'm down at the exhibitor booth, so if you guys want to see any more of this or got some questions on it, you can certainly stop down or stop after, and we can get into this. So I'm just going to go and jump back to our PowerPoint to kind of close things out here quickly. So last thing to wrap up, address your challenges and mitigate those risks. So executive support, having them sponsor and support and help with those communications. Communications, I think I've said it plenty. It's a huge thing just to have even minor communications. Get some good objectives and goals out there that you can obtain and go after and go towards, instead of just kind of all over, well, what are we doing today? What are we doing for user adoption? And then effective and timely training readiness is huge too. Don't plan on get everybody adopted 3 months after the go live. Make sure that you're ready at the go live. And here's just kind of a trend showing where we have the unmanaged change. It stays quite below the average, where when we do have managed change, yeah, there's still a dip. There's still a dip in the adoption and people wanting to use this thing. But it's less, and all of a sudden you can skyrocket that usage. Go back to the basics: who, what, where, when, why. Ask those questions right up front. It makes your job so much easier to kind of plan for stuff. Here's just a reminder of those modern learning programs. As I mentioned, coaching and mentoring, thing of the past, but I don't think it should be. I think it's something that can be very helpful and use some new ways. Communication's huge. And then the last one, that governance. Have some sort of governance and reporting in place. Even just to report to your management and saying, hey, this is where we're at on user adoption and where we're at on our training programs and so forth. Consider guided learning or something like this. If you guys want to develop things on your own, there's UPK and there's other things similar. This is in-app, so this is a little different. There's some other stuff out there. If you're moving to the cloud, we've got a lot of those built and ready for you guys. There's my lovely family. I like to be more personable. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Stop down at the Oracle booth. I'll be there the rest of today. Or come on up afterwards if you guys have any questions. Last but not least, I'm told I have to remind you of this. Make sure you please fill out your evaluations. That one marked excellent and everything at the top, that just works just fine. There's a basket in the back that you can drop it on your way out. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the conference.